Watching Daybreak, and you're continuing the conversation on whether the economy can be fixed through politics. I just want to take you through some statistics here. And this is trade between Kenya and a country in the region. I'm talking about Tanzania. And when President Uhuru Kenyatta took over the reins of power in 2013, Kenya was exporting goods and services worth excuse me, 40.5 billion shillings. That was in 2013. And Kenya was importing from Tanzania goods and services worth 11.7 billion shillings. And the balance of payment at that time was 40 minus 11. That's about 29 billion shillings in favor of Kenya. In 2020, Kenya's exports to Tanzania had reduced from 40.5 billion to 31.4 billion shillings. Tanzania's exports to Kenya, or imports from Tanzania to Kenya, had risen from 11.7 billion shillings to 27 billion shillings. As we speak, the balance of payment is at 4.2 billion shillings in favor of Kenya, down from 28.8 billion shillings in 2013. That's not entirely a bad thing, bearing in mind that there's the exchange of goods and services between the two countries. But some of the Kenyan exports to Tanzania are soap, medicaments or medical products, iron and steel at 4%, and others are margarine, salt, chewing gum, crown, cocks, electric accumulators, and these are goods that would be from the manufacturing sector. The goods that we import from Tanzania, listen: wood products at 14%, rice 13.6%, maize 8.1%, uncoated craft paper and paperboard 6.54%, largely products that are still in the raw nature, and food, like you can see, from rice and maize. And one of the concerns, Dr. Kenan, in this country is that, as he says, agriculture too important, but is still not able to sufficiently feed the population. And people complain of expensive inputs, farm inputs, expensive cost of production, expensive cost when it comes to manufacturing. But you can see, between Tanzania and ourselves, we're importing more raw materials, and we are exporting more manufactured products. What do you think is the solution if Kenya is to retain its high position, especially in the region, but also at the same time we are sufficient in producing our own food?
That's an important question. First, we must appreciate that Kenya is a member of the global community. The kind of economic liberalization that we have deliberately implemented since 1991 have opened our economy actually to certain challenges. And this is why actually in most developed countries right now there's the trend actually to have a bit of protectionism tailor-made for the economy actually of that particular country. What you are seeing in Tanzania, I was privileged actually to accompany His Excellency President Kibaki. I think it was 2010 or I think 2011 to Tanzania, where we have had so many MOUs signed. What you are seeing in Tanzania right now actually is complex. If you analyze most of the foreign direct investors actually in Tanzania, most of them are Kenyans. So what we used to export to Tanzania is now being produced, locally produced or locally manufactured in Tanzania by Kenyan direct investors actually in Tanzania. So on the flip side, we are gaining more through wealth creation. Because like if, take for example Bidco. Bidco used to export their products to Tanzania. Right now Bidco has manufacturing plant in Tanzania. So what and owned by a Kenyan businessman. So what we used to export is now being manufactured in Tanzania. The only difference is the people who are gaining more in terms of cheap labor, in terms of other economic gains are Tanzanians. But if you look at the key thing, it's driven by Kenyan businessmen. If you look at again the analysis of all the foreign direct investors actually in Tanzania between 2000 and say 2010 to 2020, Kenyans are number 3. Number 1 is South Africans. I'm told number 2 is from the West, and number 3 are Kenyans. That is not a mean achievement for Kenyans. Mm-hmm. So meaning, if only those people will be patriotic enough, whatever wealth that they make in Tanzania will be plowed back to the Kenyan economy. But I don't know whether that now will end to the other, you know, Western capitals. But again, something that you have alluded to, which is actually a worrying thing, is we have killed our export base, which is basically our agricultural sector, in the name of going for cheap imports. And I think this is why the government must put in place deliberate measures to protect our farmers. And this is the only way actually we can create wealth, we can create employment, and we can allow this issue of now, you know, moving to cities like the way he has alluded to. Somebody was analyzing the effects of SGR. The effect of SGR, truth be told, is from Mombasa to Nairobi, you have seen the emergence of a number of urban centers. Meaning it's one way of decongesting Mombasa and Nairobi. So many other people are now moving to the routes, going back to actually the emerging centers between Nairobi and Mombasa. What about if devolution was working effectively? Many people will be moving from the cities to their villages. That is why what we need to inject in devolution is efficiency. Once we have efficiency and transparency in the management of the resources that we devolve, and remember, what we have is not a political, it's not a federation. It's not a confederation, it's not a federation, it's an economic devolution. The units are just purely for economic devolution. I think initially when we started these units in 2013, there was a mistaken belief that what the governors and other people, other counties enjoyed was a bit of you know, some sort of independence actually from
government,
from the center. We have one unitary state called Kenya with devolved economic units. These devolved economic units actually were meant to work for whatever actually we have raised, to create employment, to allow many other people actually to test the fruits of independence, to spur our agricultural base. And that's why we are saying once we have you know, a properly run county governments, these challenges that we are seeing right now,
right,
even this theory of bottom-up approach will not be there, because the bottom they'll be referring to actually will be devolution. And devolution will already be there, which is a known concept actually in the whole world.
Okay.
But the challenges we are experiencing right now, we have taken shortcuts. And this is one thing that we must address as a country. The shortcuts to economic modernization is not deliberate or outrageous liberalization that we have done in the past. We must, at certain stage, invoke our inherent rights to protect our industries.
Okay.
In particular, our agricultural sector. And this is why if you go to a place like Dublin, Ireland, our coffee is being used to blend you know, the low quality coffee from other areas. And you'll be told, if you ask and you go to one of the coffee shops, somebody will tell you, this good coffee that we have in here is blended, the Kenyan coffee. How about if we have had the patent, if we have had deliberate measures actually to protect the rights of our coffee farmers? Even the person who is using our coffee to blend other coffees will have transparently declared that part of this is the Kenyan coffee, and therefore pay back our coffee farmers through some sort of appreciation. This is not there. The same is happening to our tea. If you ask even
let me circulate the question to this side. And Kadzutso, if you to look at those realities that I just highlighted there, and also talk about some of the challenges that the manufacturers and the private sector has been complaining about in this country, whether it's from the high cost of energy, the high cost of raw materials, and at a time that you talk about these are the challenges remaining, how then do you move forward at a time that partly the reason why the cost of energy is high is because the government needs revenue? So how do you deal with this at a time that a country needs revenue but also needs to spur growth at its sectors, whether it's agriculture or whether it's manufacturing, and the raw materials also need to be cheaper, most of them coming from the agricultural sector?
It is good to note that close to 95% of our manufacturing sector is agro-processing. Yeah? So when you say manufacturing, people think of this big whatever. No. It's your posho mills, sugar milling and whatever. 95% making cooking oil and soap and all these things. They are all products of the agricultural sector. So 95% of our manufacturing is actually agro-processing. Tanzania, Kenya, yes. we need to export, we need to import. We are not an island. That's number one. And if you're ever going to start a business that will make you a billionaire in dollars in Kenya, you should not be thinking of the Kenyan market, you should be thinking outside the Kenyan market. As I've shown you from the numbers, the people that are between the age of 25 and 49, which would be your people with purchasing power, are only around 14 or so, 15 or so million. And of those, majority of them are in the informal sector. So purchasing power is also very low in the country. So if you're ever going to, that's why you find your equity banks, your insurance companies opening branches in the region, and you're wondering, but your penetration is still very low in the country. Why are you thinking of Tanzania and insurance penetration is not even 2%, 3% here? But you realize that the 2%, 3% covers the people that can actually either one, afford it, so they are trying to expand the market. So for any business person who is not thinking of the region, then you have a problem. The question then is, how then do you grow your economy faster so that either you are a net exporter of value-added goods? Yeah, let Tanzania export all their rice and the things they're importing. That's not a problem. As long as our exports to them are value added, you realize your balance of payments between the two countries will always be okay. The role of the government is not to create jobs. Government does not create jobs. Government creates a conducive environment to make sure that businesses thrive, businesses expand, and businesses expanding, then those ones create jobs. So one is definitely having a consistent and consistent tax regime. A problem for our tax regime changes every budget cycle. Every year the finance minister thinks, now I have to go read the budget, let me, so there's no consistency. People are wondering, okay, is this VAT still going to be there next year? Is this excess duty going to increase? Is it not going to increase? So there's no tax consistency every year. So that's one thing that the government needs to sort out. If you're putting a tax policy... But
it would appear to be a bit of consistency in going up.
Yeah, definitely, because of debt. They need to pay back whatever. But if you have putting a tax policy, put a tax policy that says this tax policy is going to be there for the next 4 years. Yeah, we'll review it then. Businesses now are able to plan that. Okay, so one of my costs is going to be, but not that every year you find that there's a new tax that has been thrown in, which throws you completely out of the curve. The electricity sector. Kenya generates a lot of electricity, but our consumption is very low. And the reason why our electricity is high is because we've invested so much in generation, but we're not consuming it. And that generation has to be paid. Yeah, the reason why KenGen is a very profitable company is because they have a customer that will pay for the electricity whether they use it or don't use it. That's what, so people think KenGen is a star. I'm thinking, even if me I was running a business where it is by law that you are going to buy from me, whether you need it or you don't need it, you're going to buy from me. So Kenya Power ends up buying one power that it does not need. Yeah, they have these independent power producers contracts that they have signed where they have to buy whether they need it or they don't need it. Yeah, so if we are not going to be able to grow consumption or say, okay guys, I think we are okay in terms of where we have reached in terms of generation, let's put a pause. Because the more cost we put in generation, that cost is passed to the people that use the electricity. So that's our problem when it comes to electricity. Then the third role of government, I always wonder, we have ambassadors planted all over the country, the world. Dr. has mentioned we are very good in diplomacy. Yeah. But if that ambassador has no KPI of making sure that they create a market for the products for Kenya, that ambassador should be fired. Because then they're not helping the country. We are not at war, so we are not trying to look for allies for defending us against war. Our ambassadors should be the #1 forefront. KPI 8 to 5, whether you're seated in London or the US. How do I get more products to this country, either duty-free or on favorable terms? What do these guys need? And Kenya is a port of Mombasa. We know what Rwanda, Uganda, and all these guys import a lot. Yeah, why not sit down and say, okay, these guys are importing a lot of ball bearings. Yeah, let's set an EPZ, give an incentive. If you set up a ball bearing center here in Kenya, no tax for the next 3 years, 4 years. But these guys created employment, and now you're telling Uganda, instead of you spending 2 weeks waiting for your ball bearings, we can make them here and send them to. We have that, literally have that data on our fingertips to be able to create such type of environments. And that's the role of the government. Yeah, making sure that we have markets for our products outside of the country. Do
those people who work in government know this?
I will hand that question over to, I support my life.
Do they? Because, I mean, we are not short of skills if what he's saying is anything to go by. So what happens? How do we lose this focus when politics is at play? And especially after you've won an election, why don't we see all these policies being implemented?
Yeah, that's why Dr. here should have mentioned that the kind of the generally known economic models, whether it's empirical or theoretical, both require individuals with a zeal, with the knowledge, with the determination actually to implement. This country is not short of policies, I can tell you. We have the best human resource capital. Mm-hmm. But I think what we are lacking is a bit of patriotism, commitment, and transparency. If you go to Malaysia, one time I was privileged to go to, as a young legislator in 1999, mm-hmm. to go to the Malaysian parliament, and in the name of benchmarking, the Honorable Uburu Odinga and many others. So one of the things that we wanted to know is how, this, we were trying to look at the making of the export process and so on, and the other institutions that we felt were required actually to support that, the making of that particular organization. Mm-hmm. And so we went through everything. We, in the name of benchmarking, we talked to our colleagues, and finally we went to see, we paid a courtesy call actually to the clerk. And he gave us a document that they borrowed from Kenya in 1974 on the same thing that we were trying to benchmark on. Meaning, if only somebody was serious, and this is why, if only somebody was serious at the technical level, we would not have gone for that benchmarking in Malaysia. We wasted taxpayers' money, we wasted time, we wasted a lot of things, and we even ridiculed ourselves because we were looking for something that we had already exported, mm-hmm. in the name of a framework that will govern what we wanted at that particular time. Meaning, this brings the question, mm-hmm. do we have a well-informed, well-prepared, transparent, technical team in the name of the public service? And until and unless we have this particular group, the political class come and change. You know, it's like there's a cycle of every 5 years. Mm-hmm. What the group that runs a country, a group that develops a country, is not actually the politicians per se, are the technocrats. I think in our case, without prejudice, our technocrats have not done very well. Our technocrats have not lived up to the expectation of the people.
Is it because politicians don't listen to them?
No, our technocrats also think ethnically, regionally, and think for themselves, and at times do things that are just purely tailor-made for their personal aggrandizement. This is why reforms of the public service, reforms of the public sector is so critical to our well-being, and this is one thing that I think I wouldn't say has been neglected, mm-hmm. but I think it's not functioning as expected. I'll give you the example. We all knew that we promulgated the August 2010 Constitution, and we knew the base, the critical aspect of that was devolution. Mm-hmm. Were we prepared? They were the kind of thing that today, if you go to my county, 90% of the public workers there are people from that particular county. That was not what was envisaged under devolution. The people at the public service at that particular time, or those who are tasked actually with the transition, did not do a good work. Meaning right now, 90% of the people who are working in Kiambu are people who are coming from Kiambu. 90% of the people who are working in Wajir are people who are working...
But
that aspect is what...
But is there anything stopping all these governors from doing the right thing now?
It's not even the governor. It's the way the whole program actually was prepared by those who are tasked actually with the transition.
That's what I'm saying, Dr. Kenan. I mean, the transition was 2013-2014. So has anybody been stopped from doing the right thing, righting the mistakes of those that went before them?
What I'm coming to is this. First, we must realize that we have a country. We must realize that we have a country, and therefore all of us as citizens must be prepared proudly to protect, promote, and project the image of our country at all levels. That is why if you look at our foreign policy, and this takes me back to what our brother has said, if you look at our foreign policy right now, and for the first time, it's President Uhuru actually, who has penned our first written foreign policy That is which means predictable. The pillars are there. The first pillar is economic diplomacy. The emphasis by our diplomat right now is economic diplomacy. We do not have serious political representation because that era of it's gone. So meaning if every performance contracting of every ambassador or high commissioner or consular general representing Kenya should be on what they contribute to our economic well-being. And I believe the managers of our foreign policy, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, should emphasize that particular aspect. And I do know that in one of the key policies of President Uhuru Kenyatta was economic diplomacy. So that is already there, theoretically.
All right.
As to how it's applied, how it's being projected, how it's being used actually to help our people of Kenya in their economic well-being is something that actually all of us need to wait and see, because that is now the domain of Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
All right, Dr. Kenyan, I want us to take a look at some of the feedback that has been sent, and I'll give Reginald a few seconds. Mutava Japheth, these economic models brought about by different politicians are good, but they have not yet responded on how they are going to manage them with the current debt level. T. Mwangemi, our leaders have too many ideas on how to turn back our economy, but they are too greedy to act. Chengewa Tenga, devolution is the best gift of Kenya. We need to improve it seriously, especially those who fought for it. Rain Asamo, it is about right leadership that has enabled South Korea and Asian economies grow. The tragedy of the nation is bad leadership in Kenya. Engineer Lazaro, our divisive tribal-based politics is poison to the growth of the economy. Our leaders should change their mode of politics from name-calling, propaganda, and regional-based to issue-based. Omando Vikri, you say that value-based education that impacts relevant, appropriate, sustainable, and applicable skills, knowledge, values, habits, and competencies will help deal with the thin workforce characterized with basic, serious knowledge and skill gaps. And of course, if you're talking about skills, then you would be targeting those that are teachable, the age that is teachable. So I don't know what we do with the many millions whose maximum education is just basic education. Your closing remarks, especially as we dive into the campaigns for 2022 and all these information that Kenyans will receive, how should they see it?
My advice is let's move away from models. As a country, we need to agree, one, what is the problem that we are trying to solve. Then as you go to the ballot, you're saying we have a problem of income and rural poverty. Who is best addressed to give the power to govern? Because the person who has power or the person who is in governance uses their power to direct policy to be able to change this. So let's first agree as a country, what is the problem we are trying to solve, than to be hoodwinked by politicians in addressing models, but we've not even agreed on the problem. Only when we diagnose a problem, then you can come up with a solution. Then now we can say, okay, now who has the best vehicle to deliver this solution? If we don't have these two, I'm sorry, we are like hamsters spinning on a wheel. We'll just make a lot of noise at the same spot and not move forward. When you are choosing your member of parliament, it is not the road that he has built or the toilet he has built. The role of members of parliament is legislation. So look at your MP for the last 5 years. What legislation has he put in place that improves your life? I saw someone talked about debt. Your MP signed on it. The Treasury cannot borrow without MPs signing on it. So if the government is over-borrowing and saying there's an over-borrowing problem, then you need to ask your MPs, what have you done to curb this? Through legislation and not through noise on Twitter or in rallies. The power of the legislator, of the MP, is the pen in parliament. How many laws has your MP sponsored or supported that change your life? Not the road he has built or the toilet or the one classroom that he has put just before election.
We had a very interesting conversation yesterday, and the legislators on set were saying that it is you, the voter, who has been piling pressure on them. Every time they are home, they have to dish out some resources, either to support you for school fees or for medical care. All these challenges that Kenyans are looking for solutions for. And that's our time here. Dr. Eden Kenan from the Jubilee Party, the Joint Secretary of the Parliamentary Group there. Asante sana. Reginald Kadzutsu, the CEO from Amana Capital. Thank you so much for making time for us. Again, Kimani Ichung'wah did not join us. We had invited him. He's the Member of Parliament for Kikuyu constituency and has been championing the bottom-up approach. But that's our time. The conversation continues. Do the reading for yourself, do the listening for yourself, and interrogate as best as you can. Willis Raburu is up next with Matters Social. Stay tuned. My name is Sam Gituku. Bye for now.